Hello everyone, I am Divya Shekhar and you're watching Leadership Mantras with Forbes India. It's often assumed that being a next generation entrepreneur and taking over a legacy business is as easy as it gets. But is it? Our guest on today's episode offers interesting insights on the triumphs and tribulations of being a next generation entrepreneur. Nadia Chauhan is the Joint Managing Director of Parle Agro, the makers of Frooti and Appy Fizz. She is credited with transforming the organization from a single brand company to a multi-brand beverage behemoth. Hello Nadia, welcome to Leadership Mantras.
Thank you.
So being a Gen Next entrepreneur can be both a boon and a bane. So what are the pros and cons according to you?
I think that the pros really come from actually valuing the journey of the business itself. We're fourth generation entrepreneurs now, and we have an extremely rich history, from our grandfather's time, where he was known as the father of soft drinks and really developed and built the entire beverage industry, packaged beverage industry in India, to my father having taken over, and various big milestones through our journey, from selling some of our largest beverages and then rebuilding again from scratch to where we are today. The journey itself is sometimes so powerful and inspiring that as we take on, I think that valuing where we've come from and moving with as much passion and as large a vision to really take it further to the next level is what keeps us really motivated and going forward. So there are lots of values that are sort of already there, as you keep going from generation to next, and you further add on to those values and keep the energy and the passion sort of moving forward. So I can't really think of what are the negatives. I think that the only would be the fact that you're always sort of you're obviously benchmarked to the rest of your family and the rest of the generations, but I think that when you drive it with as much rigor or as much passion, you just keep moving forward and naturally look at constantly sort of outdoing and constantly just growing, and that's really been what our journey has also been.
So can you take us back to your earliest days in the business? Obviously, like you said, you were introduced to the business while you were growing up, you grew up with it. Yeah. So what were those days like? I mean, what was your first sort of introduction to the business? How did you get to know about what the brand was? What were your earliest days like, and what sort of prompted you to finally sort of enter into the business and take it forward?
So, I mean, the early days go back to when I was really very, very young. I remember, whether it was after school or on holidays, all my time I would end up spending in our office, the same very premise, and we were always welcomed, whether it was to just be around the office and be part of a discussion, or maybe some product tasting, or that point of time we also had the factory here, so to walk through the factory and really look at what's happening. So we were always very much within the environment of the office, and that really was the first exposure, and a lot of the discussions that would happen early on at that point of time, it creates a sense of intrigue and interest, and actually also sort of sparks that sense of passion, especially when you start off that early, because you're just constantly surrounded by it. I would love to create, so I would create, and anything I created I would want to make it into a business. So when I learned how to make brownies, I decided, okay, it's time to start a brownie business. When I learned how to do make tie and dye clothes, I decided, okay, it's time to start a tie and dye business. and I would literally do that, go door to door selling within my area. That time we didn't have social media and other, very convenient marketing tools, so the only way to go about marketing it was literally going door to door, picking up the phone. So I used to love, trying my hand at all of this, and then as I got more and more exposure within the business, the mind started working on really how I could keep marketing our own products and build our own brands. And it started off with Frooti, because at that point of time Frooti was our largest brand. It was actually our whole and soul. So it really did start off with Frooti, where Frooti was going through some challenges about, really being relevant for the new consumer. It tended to have that association with, a past generation, but needed to become more relevant for the new consumer. So a large part of what I did in the first few years in the company was really looking at how to contemporize Frooti, making Frooti relevant for the consumer of today, and also a second very big part was building a portfolio so as to reduce the dependence on Frooti as one single brand for the company. So looking at multiple categories, multiple products, different forms of packaging as well to expand, the consumption occasions.
So, taking off from that point, when you have the vision to sort of expand the company's offerings from, say, a single brand to having multiple brands, like you also mentioned earlier, in family businesses, it's the values that are central to the way the company functions. Yeah, and it's passed on from generation to generation. But each generation also comes with their own understanding about how they want to run the business. So, what kind of a balance does one have to strike there, and sort of how did you go about it when you had this vision of, okay, I need to do this, I need to launch multiple beverages and sort of expand that?
I think that as a family and as a business, we're very synergized, and I think that a lot of what we do, we all have one very, very clear thought that it is, from the perspective of growth and not easy growth. We look at building our own brands, we look at creating categories, not just looking at, buying out growth or other means. I think that these are certain things, or if we define those as the values of the business, whether it's innovation or whether it's this aspect, it's something that we're all very synergized about. We all imbibe these very clear values, and that makes it really easy, even as a generation that followed and looking at expansion. I think it made it really easy for me to really talk about my ideas, or for my ideas to really be accepted as well, because I didn't come into the business wanting to sort of redefine everything or to change everything that's been built. And like I mentioned, I think valuing the journey is so important in really being able to create stability and growth and expansion. So I don't, like a lot of people who come in to any business, whether it's your own business or whether it's a new role that you're taking on, tend to often come in saying they want to sort of look at making so many changes, or and think that change is all that's sometimes needed. But sometimes it's also, you need to kind of hold on, really gauge what it's really taken to come where we are, and really understand the vision and then define the way forward towards achieving that vision. So for me, it was it was a slow journey. I didn't want to really look at just rushing into things, and really understand the skin of the business really well before I took on any large initiatives or any transformative initiatives. And I think that's what helped make some of the transformative initiatives that I did take on later on a lot more successful, because I did understand the whole business really in depth.
What were your earliest days in the business like? How did you learn the ropes of the business, and how did sort of you and your siblings go about, say, dividing your roles and responsibilities? What were those days like?
So the early days, I would say the most fun, because you would never really see me in office. So I spent all my time traveling. I would travel almost 4 to 5 days a week, literally just come back maybe for a quick stop and then head out again. My goal was really to be, I mean, today as an FMCG company, as a beverage player, catering primarily to the Indian market, was first and foremost to really just understand the whole country, and understand consumers across the country, understand our system all over. So I would travel, the length and breadth of the country, work with our people in the market, and it was very, very hands-on. I often actually miss those days, but it was really, really every aspect, whether it was marketing, whether it was sales, whether it was product development, we're still very hands-on. But at that point of time, we would, I would spend all my time outside of the office. I would literally only come back to, consolidate thoughts, put together some of the plans that, were an outcome of some of these visits or some of these meetings and discussions. We were much smaller then, so we were at about 300 crores as a company at that point. Like I mentioned, also in terms of the number of brands we had, we were at a much smaller scale. So it's really important to understand as much in depth and really be very, very hands-on, and not just at a strategic level but very operationally, and at an execution level also be hands-on. So I worked with, when I came and I put together a core team. This was in 2003, and I feel really proud about the fact, if I have to actually talk about an achievement, I really do believe that this is one achievement, is that the team that I put together at that point in 2003 as my core team continues to be 20 years later still my core team even today. Some of them will also retire very soon, but the whole journey of 300 crores to where we are today at about 8,000 crores has happened with this core team together. With lots of different challenges, lots of ups and downs, lots of role swapping and all kinds of things that we have gone through as as a system. But the passion of this growth, of this journey, of even towards the vision, I won't just say it's mine. I think it is owned by this core team, and that is what's really made achieving it a lot more possible, because it's I've not just held on to it as saying that it is my company or my vision or my goal, but it has been everybody who's involved, and it sort of brings alive the whole vision and makes achieving it a lot more easier.
As a leader, what are the lessons that you have learned from, say, your employees or your core team, working with them?
I would say that the biggest lesson is to be able to sort of separate your emotions from, not just your decisions, but in general, actually just being able to isolate sometimes. A lot of what we do is also dependent on emotion, but at the same time, a lot of what we do sometimes needs you to sort of step away. I think that it's easier sometimes for some of our team members to be able to kind of step away from that emotion versus us, and I would say that is during certain very hard decisions that they've been able to kind of show the way, if one has to put it that way. But there's so many different lessons at so many different junctures, where you really have to, if I look at another perspective, is that a large part, like I said, that this core team, they literally is, they're part of this business as much as I am. They own it as much as I do, and at the end, the biggest lesson is, if it's in the interest of the business, come what may, we gun for it. And I think that the way they demonstrate that, it sort of fuels you even even more, and to really raise the level of commitment, to really raise the level of the drive and the effort that goes into actually achieving any of the goals that we define for ourselves. We're constantly defining goals that are, beyond the category growth rates, or beyond sometimes what one considers as achievable, but really the strength of the team and the determination is really what gets us there.
Right. And as a leader, what is perhaps the toughest decision that you've had to take, and how did you sort of go about executing that?
I think that if I look back, I think that one of the toughest decisions for me was when we actually decided to discontinue our entire food business. So we had a completely independent sales and distribution infrastructure for that business. We had a snack brand called Hippo, and when we did decide to discontinue that on various very business reasons, it had nothing to do really with the product. But it was a very tough call because it was we had to actually close down an entire division, and I think it was the first time I've had to sort of deal with something like that. Also just basis the way I lead. I do believe that a large part of my leadership is based on driving people with a certain sense of passion, and if one puts it crudely as that emotion, that it was a very tough call, to have to kind of shut down an entire division. And it we really waited till that last moment where it was the only way forward, and try to look at all possible ways of how we could sort of sustain. But that was definitely, that's something I think will remain with me for a very long time, as a lot of the other ones, they could be tough momentarily, but you kind of get past it. This one is something that I think would, yeah.
As a leader, is it easy for you to deal with conflict? How do you deal with it? And are there other things about running a business that possibly scare you? How do you sort of navigate that?
I think we've been taught one very powerful principle, which is about simplifying and simplicity. And every time we've been faced with a conflict or a problem, I think that the one thing that we look at doing is breaking it down. And most often than not, you will see a conflict is really just a very tiny thing that has triggered, something that's become big. Really that's the one thing I look at doing, that okay, when you have an issue at hand or a conflict or any of it, really being able to break it down and get to the core of what is the real issue. And often real issues are always layered with a whole host of other things, but if you get down to the bottom of it, it's the most simple thing to actually resolve. And then again, if the goal is clear, that look, you have to be able to just resolve and move forward, you sort of just move in that direction then naturally.
And during your extensive travels across the country, what have you learned about the Indian consumer, what they want with respect to their FMCG products, and how their demand has evolved over the years?
I think that India is a very unique, absolutely beautiful country, where every part of the country is just so different they're so different in many ways, and then they're so similar in in certain ways. And it's amazing about, when you look at how passionate Indian consumers in general are across the country about food and beverage. So that is, I would say that's the most special thing about us as Indians. No matter where you go, whether you go to people's homes, whether you travel across the country, whether like even in my case, when I used to travel and meet different retailers, everybody wants to offer you something to eat or drink, and it's such a big part culturally of India and Indians. seeing the diversity was incredible, and looking at how to create products that can work universally is really where the challenge lies, you know, because when we're looking at products that can sell all across the country, yet there is so much diversity in food and beverage alone. I remember, if we just take an example of a beverage called chash as we know it in West, which is known in so many different names in North, in South, primarily made from the same set of ingredients, but the local flavors get added to it to make it of that region, so it's beautiful to see that kind of passion for food and beverage all across. So far we have been really successful with all whether it's Frooti or it's with Appy Fizz or even with Smooth. We've been able to cater to the country at large, and going forward we hope that at some point we can also look at creating products that are very region specific to kind of enhance acceptance for a particular region and also appreciate the nuances of culture within that region.
Right. And do people still prefer their beverages in smaller packets, or is that still a thing?
I think in general, value for money is a very important factor. We still primarily drive a lot of our business through the 10 rupee pack price point. Also 5 rupees is a big segment, so in the largest segment for FMCG does continue to still be under 20 rupees as a price point. So that's definitely there, and I think that also knowing that you've got a huge rural consumer base, you need to make the products affordable, you need to make it accessible, and so that continues to be a big agenda and a big growth lever, though of course you see certain amount of growth coming from the larger packs. A lot of home consumption got triggered, especially post or during and post COVID, but the impulse consumption and the on the go consumption, which is primarily driven through the smaller packs, is still the largest segment.
And now coming to the women at Parle Agro, how is retaining women in the workforce a priority for you? Because the larger conversation, especially post-COVID, has been about how a lot of women have fallen out of the workforce and haven't been able to come back. So what are your thoughts around how we can find more role models for women, how we can help them sort of still continue with their careers or continue being part of the workforce?
I think when I was in school and I would come to office after school, like I mentioned, maximum amount of time that I would spend would be in our R&D facility, which was headed by a lady called Kavita Joshi at that point of time. She was our R&D head, and this was, I don't know how many years ago. She continues to be with us even today. We have actually the highest level of stability amongst the women working within our business, and I can think of multiple examples beyond just her who've been there from the time that much before I even joined the business. I think that a large encouraging factor is making sure you're able to provide that sense of balance. One of the biggest factors is just being able to find balance in terms of time. As a business today, we operate at very different hours as compared to a lot of other businesses. We start at 8:30, we end at 5. That simple factor alone allows for people to be able to strike that balance between work and home. Having those few hours at home to be able to do what you need to do, whether it's for me or for anybody else within our business, I think that little factor of just time, makes it possible.
Yes. Right. Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Nadia. It was wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you.
And for all our viewers, for more videos on leadership mantras, tune into our YouTube channel or visit the Forbes India website. This is Divya Shekhar. See you next time.